Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Andy Melton with Inner Solutions, and today I want to talk about 8 ways to ease health anxiety in this moment. This video may have caught your eye because you're feeling it. Your anxiety is high, your emotions are engaged. Maybe it's something that has to do with the world stage, or maybe it's something about you and your own body. But whatever it is, you're there. I hope this video can be useful to you. We're going to talk about what health anxiety is. We're going to talk about how do you know if you're experiencing it, and then what to do about it. So first off, let's talk about what health anxiety is. All right, so first, let's talk about the word anxiety itself. So the definition of anxiety in and of itself is the fear of the unknown. All right, so that's kind of the quick and dirty definition of anxiety, the fear of the unknown. You add health to that, and you have fear of the unknown related to your health or related to health in the world, whatever it may be. So health anxiety happens when someone becomes preoccupied with the idea of a serious health problem, even though no diagnosis or evidence is present. Now, real quick, I want to honor the period of time that we're in. Okay, there's a lot going on in the world, and I think it's a tendency for everyone right now to take time and think about all of it and to maybe worry about all of it. So I want to honor that. I think that's a natural thing when the world is going through something like we're going through. But nevertheless, I do think there are times when we can be excessive with our worry. And it can get to a point where it's not beneficial to us or the people around us. So today, let's talk about how can you tell if health anxiety is coming around? How can you tell if it's with you? Kind of like a friend or an associate that you don't really care to be there anymore. I don't know. But how do you know when it's coming around? Well, first off, the words always and never will start to show up in your thoughts and in your communication. Always and never. Now that you know this, look out for it and you'll start to notice. It's really quite interesting. Here's an example. You might be thinking someday, there's always something wrong with my body. You know, maybe you've thought that before. Or maybe you're talking with a friend and you might say, I'm never healthy. My body is never healthy. You know, something along those lines. When those words always and never start to show up in your thoughts and in your communication, that can be an indication that anxiety and emotion is engaged. Okay? Here's another one. Conclusive statements about self or others. Conclusive statements about self or others. Okay, so what we'll often do, for example, we might say, you know, I'm not good at fighting sickness. You know, or we might say, no one understands what I'm going through. You know, we make these conclusive statements that kind of define something about us or about others. Here's another one. An urgent pursuit of information. All right, remember, emotion is not patient, right? It has no patience, right? So it needs to find out something, and it needs to find it out now, right? And so that's an indication when we have an urgent desire to pursue information. So that could show up by Googling symptoms, right? Which, by the way, is very rarely a good idea, just heads up. Frequently asking friends or family about symptoms, maybe your own or theirs or that kind of a thing. Maybe it's second guessing self or others. Okay, so that's another way that maybe you know something to be true, and you've checked it out and you know it's true, but your emotion starts to second guess yourself, and you have to kind of go back and check time and time again. Here's another one. Could be pessimism. Okay, could be this type of thing where you might think to yourself, man, I'm just waiting for the other shoe to drop. Or you might say, this time I know my worst fears are going to come true. All right, so all of these things that I just listed are ways, are sort of red flags, if you will, ways to be aware that we might have our emotion kicked up, our anxieties are kicked up in that moment, and we might be dealing with health anxiety. All right, so let's talk about 8 ways to ease 8 ways to ease health anxiety right now. Okay. Now, first off, we're going to go in reverse order. All right. So, number 8, first off, it might be useful. Now, this one's tricky. All right. So, hang in there. But it might be useful to define what symptoms are necessary in order to visit an ER, an emergency room. Okay. Now, that may seem counterintuitive because we don't want to feed our emotion. But it might be helpful to define what those symptoms are because then you can kind of have a baseline, if you will. So, how do you do that? Well, you might Google, again, be careful with this. You might want to do this with a friend or a family member, all right? But you can Google this phrase. You can say when to visit ER for, and then fill in the blank with whatever might be on your mind in that moment. You will get a list of symptoms, usually severe symptoms, that sort of make you a good candidate to go into the ER, okay? And here's what you're going to find most of the time. In fact, probably 95% of the time, maybe more, you're going to find that those severe symptoms are not what you're dealing with. But by reading those and knowing those, you can have a baseline to be able to say, yeah, I'm not dealing with any of those, and so I know that I'm not ER material, okay? Which is sometimes good to know when our anxieties are kicked up. It's like, nah, I'm not ER material. That's okay, right? Along with this idea is to schedule an appointment with your primary care physician. That sometimes can be really useful because you've got it on the schedule. You know you're going to visit with them. You can talk to them about your symptoms, and maybe that brings that anxiety down just a little bit, okay? So that's number 8. Let's move on to things you can do right here, right now. Number 7 is to change your scenery. Change your scenery. So this could be as simple as going outside, walking around. I also suggest something a little goofy, and that is to change your perspective even in your own, whether you're in an office right now or you're at home in a living room or a bedroom. Change your perspective. And here's what I mean. I actually remember doing this when I was a kid where I would lay on the floor just to, I don't know if I knew I was doing this at the time, but I would get a different view of the room than I would usually ever get laying on the floor. Or sometimes I would lay on the bed and hang my head off the back of the bed, and I would see the room upside down. And that sounds strange, but your emotion can respond to things like that because it's different, it's unique. So changing your scenery can do something to help ease that health anxiety. All right, number 6, reach out to a friend to check in. Now, when you do this, reach out to a friend, I recommend starting that conversation with something like, hey, my anxieties are kicked up at the moment, and I just want to check in with somebody who's maybe not feeling the same thing I am, and just kind of check in and see if what I'm feeling is more rational, more irrational, more emotional, more realistic, whatever the case may be. And if you open the conversation that way, then your friend knows what to listen for. They can kind of view you or listen to your story through that lens, and they might be able to be a help to you in that moment. So open the conversation with a little bit of a start there to say, hey, I'm wondering if what I'm feeling is more emotional or more rational. All right, number 5. Number 5, avoid impulsive behaviors. All right, when your anxiety is kicked up, you're going to want to do anything you can because it's uncomfortable. Nobody likes to be there. So you're going to do everything you can to escape it. And we all, every human being on the planet has a list of quote unquote impulsive behaviors, right? That we sometimes want to engage in that help take our attention away from whatever the uncomfortable thing is, okay? And I encourage you, avoid those as best you can in those moments. The reason being is that emotional moment, that anxious moment will pass, and you don't want to be on the other side of that and having engaged in a behavior that's not beneficial, that's kind of, you dig yourself a hole in a sense and have to crawl out of the hole later. So by avoiding those impulsive behaviors, you can keep yourself on the surface, ready to go as soon as that anxious moment passes. All right, number 4, take a break from news. Take a break from social media. All right, you may have done this. Maybe you've done this recently. Remember, you were not designed. I was not designed to carry the weight of the world. Remember, until recent history, our whole world was pretty much a 20-mile radius around our home. That was it. That was all we had to think about and worry about were the people and the situations within that radius of our home. Well, thankfully, technology has created an amazing connection between us and the whole world, which is awesome. But one of the negatives to that is we hear about all of the world's negatives, and we hear about them in real time in the palm of our hand, usually via our cell phone, maybe our laptop, whatever it is. And so taking a break from that can be really useful. Remember, you are the filter for your information. No one can do that for you. You have to funnel. I have to funnel. We all have to funnel that information into a digestible amount of information, of news, because we just weren't designed to carry all of that. Number 3. All right, number 3. We're getting down to the last 3. Straighten up your living space. Straighten up your living space. Remember, emotion is intangible. When your emotions are kicked up and your anxieties are kicked up, sometimes it can be helpful to engage the tangible, right? To engage your senses. Taste, touch, smell, and so on. Engage these senses. One of the ways to do that is to straighten up your living room, straighten up your bedroom, straighten up your office. These are things that you can control, you can touch, you can see, you can feel when things are a little bit straightened up, and that can help the intangible world of your anxiety. All right, number 2, assess what you can and can't control. A good way to do this is to grab a sheet of paper, draw a line down the middle, put can't on one side, put can on the other, and to literally go through your thoughts and writing down which category each of your thoughts should be in, right? Either the I can control that or the I can't control that category, okay? So this can be a sort of a really cool thought exercise to be able to delineate which one is best in that moment. All right, finally, we have the number 1, at least for this list, the number 1 way to ease your health anxiety, and that is to be present. Be present. Now, I know a lot of people talk about being present, but I'm telling you, it is a good thing. It can be really useful for us when we're dealing with health anxiety. Remember that anxiety takes you up into your brain, right? It separates your mind and body to a point where you're thinking ahead and you're not necessarily present in this moment. Well, being present in this moment can help relieve anxiety symptoms. It can help relieve worry, concern, and those kinds of things because we're right here, right now. We're not all caught up in our head and caught up in our emotion. Some of the ways to be present are to meditate, to pray, to talk to a friend and really look them in the eye, sometimes to sit quietly in a room to cut out the noise of the world. There are lots of ways to be present. You can look up mindfulness techniques or grounding techniques. All these techniques are an effort to bring us back to the now and bring us back into connection between our mind and body. Thank you for listening to this. I hope it's useful, and I will talk to you next time.